RL3 RI3 Summarizing will help us make sense of a text by putting it all together with theme through all the supporting details. This particular target asks that we can give a concise, in other words not too long, summary giving identifying information, which would be APA citation, the theme or claim if we're talking about a nonfiction piece, and supporting details and quotes in an organized manner, using transitions and following the structure of the original text, in other words in the same order as events appeared in the original text. At a 2 level, you can write a summary which will typically be shorter that answers who, what, when, where, and why. You're not giving the full amount of supporting details necessary for proficiency with this particular target. At 1 level, you can write a summary with too little or, interestingly, too much information. The key with summary is you're shortening it. So too much can come in the fashion of you're pretty much just restating every single sentence in the text. That's way too much for a summary. The 4 level is all the elements of a 3, but also using rhetorical verbs or academic verbs, and we'll take a look at what that might be like. So this is just a basic outline of how a proficient summary should look. I should start with the APA citation of the text, and then in paragraph form, I'm going to see an introductory sentence with the theme or claim of the text, and then as many supporting details are as necessary to get the key ideas of the text. Okay, and if we're talking a novel, that might be a supporting detail per chapter. If we're talking a poem, it might be a supporting detail per stanza. But again, the key with a summary is that you're shortening the text. You do not need to get every single detail. Look to combine where you can. Rhetorical verbs is the marker of a 4 for a quality summary. Rhetorical verbs are verbs typically encountered in academic writing. So you'll see that there's an image off to the side here with some examples. This is by no means a complete list. Analyzes, argues, asserts, compares, contrasts, connects, defines, debates. You could add details, describes to this list. There's quite a bit more that you could really include here. Acknowledge, challenge, reveal, show. Any of these would be considered rhetorical verbs that you'd often encounter in academic writing. So we'll be doing some examples with our familiar Dulce et decorum est from Wilfred Owen. So I'm going to read through the poem and then I'll show you a 1, 2, 3, and 4 level example of a summary. The poem goes as follows. Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs and toward our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshod. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling, like floundering and flundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from his froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie, dulce et decorum est, pro patria more. All right, that is the poem, and now for some summaries. So this would be a 1-level summary with too little information. One might simply say Wilfred Owen's poem, Dulce et decorum est, is about the horrors of war. We have a partial identification. We're giving the author and the name of the text, and we give a little bit about what it's about. It's about the horrors of war. No supporting detail to back that up, and an incomplete identification. So just a 1-level summary there. A 2-level summary, again, we don't have complete identification. We still have Wilfred Owen, Dulce et decorum est, is about soldiers leaving the front line during World War I and how horrible the conditions they faced were. He wrote the poem to stop the war. So who, soldiers, what, leaving the front line. This is also where were they leaving the front line during World War I is their time period, when, and then how horrible the conditions were. It was a bit of the why, and further on into the why, he wrote the poem to stop the war. This is still too short. There's more supporting detail that we need to include, and we do not have a complete identification. Here is actually both a proficient and a 4-level summary, and we'll talk about why that is. We start with a complete identification, APA citation, Owen, Wilfred, 1921, which is the date this poem was published, close of the period. The title with only the first word capitalized, Dulce et decorum est, period. Retrieved from poetryfoundation.org, no closing punctuation. Notice it's also properly hanging indented. Okay. Now we go into our first sentence, which needs to give the theme. In Dulce et decorum est, Wilfred Owen reveals the damaging impact war has on soldiers both during and after fighting. So there's our thematic introductory sentence. Now we need to give supporting details, and I chose to give one from each stanza. Owen opens with a description of soldiers leaving the front line, quote, bloodshot, lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, end quote. He goes on to show that even as the soldiers march away, they are not safe. Gas follows them, claiming one man. Owen narrates that even in his dreams, the man plunges at him, guttering, choking, drowning. Owen describes the man's death in detail, driving to his conclusion that men who saw such a sight would not tell young men that it is noble and right to die for their country. So we have included details from each of the stanzas to help reveal the meaning of the poem through this particular summary. And this is a 4-level because I've also incorporated the rhetorical verbs. We started with reveals. Switch over here. Reveals the damaging impact wars on soldiers. Owen opens with description. He goes on to show that even as the soldiers march away, they are not safe. Gas follows them, claiming one man. Owen narrates that even in his dreams, the man plunges at him. Owen describes the man's death in detail, driving to the conclusion, and so on and so forth. So we've got 4 rhetorical verbs to help glue our summary together, making this a 4-level summary of a poem.